You spent over 15,000 hours in school, and yet no one taught you how to actually be happy. Sure, you memorized the mitochondria, diagrammed sentences, and recited the Pythagorean theorem like a robot. But when life punched you in the face with heartbreak, anxiety, or identity crisis, suddenly, it was like, where's that lesson plan? They told us school was preparing us for the real world. But they forgot to mention that the real world doesn't come with multiple choice answers. There are no pop quizzes on taxes, trauma, or how to not spiral when your plans fall apart. And here's the twist that hits the hardest: they handed you a diploma, but not a damn clue how to love yourself, trust yourself, or build a life you actually enjoy. But if we dig beneath the surface of all the facts and figures we were force-fed, we might start uncovering what really matters. Because, what's the point of knowing the phases of the moon, if you don't understand your own moods? In school, we became experts in facts, dates, formulas, chemical reactions. But most of us never learned how to sit with our emotions, process failure, or figure out why we act the way we do. You could ace a history test but still lose your mind over a text that says, "We need to talk." And that's not your fault. Emotional intelligence was never part of the curriculum. We were taught to perform, not to reflect. It's only once you start looking inward, past the grades and achievements, that you begin to realize, understanding yourself is far more important than memorizing anything in a textbook. But even that self-understanding gets distorted when you grow up thinking your value is tied to performance. Because, let's be real, when everything you did was graded, how could you not believe your worth was tied to a number? We were rewarded for high scores and punished for mistakes. And slowly, without even noticing, we started basing our self-worth on external validation. If you weren't top of the class, if you didn't have straight A's, you felt like you weren't enough. But then the report card stopped, and the silence was deafening. Suddenly, it wasn't about getting an A anymore. It was about feeling like you mattered, even when no one was clapping. And that's a hard adjustment when you've spent years chasing approval instead of authenticity. And what made it worse? You were expected to know your purpose, your career, and your entire future before you even knew who you were. Remember that moment in high school when they asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Like it was some kind of multiple choice question. At 17, we were expected to choose a job that would define us for life. But here's the thing, your purpose isn't something you select from a drop-down menu. It evolves, it changes, it sometimes disappears altogether and comes back wearing a totally different outfit. What school never told us is that it's okay to pivot. It's okay to quit the job you thought you wanted. It's okay to dream a new dream. In fact, that's how most people find their calling, by trying things, failing, starting over, and paying attention to what actually lights them up inside. But you can't even recognize what lights you up if no one ever taught you to process what you feel in the first place. And that brings us to the real test, not your IQ, but your EQ. School loved to measure intelligence. You either got it, or you didn't. But life doesn't care if you were good at trigonometry. Life cares if you can apologize when you're wrong, if you can set boundaries, if you can sit with someone who's grieving and not say something stupid. That's emotional intelligence. And unfortunately, most of us had to learn it the hard way, through broken relationships, sleepless nights, and saying the wrong thing at the worst time. Truth is, some of the smartest people in the room are also the most emotionally lost. Because school sharpened their minds, but ignored their hearts. And when emotions do come crashing in, most of us have no clue what to do, because we were taught that failure is something to fear. From day one, failure was framed as something to avoid at all costs. Get a bad grade, you're careless. Get held back, you're a disappointment. But in the real world, failure is the price of growth. It's the entry fee to anything worth doing. Life doesn't hand you warnings. It hands you wake-up calls. And when you fail out here, it's not just about a test. It's about falling apart, picking yourself back up, and learning how to breathe through the chaos. The sad part, so many of us were trained to avoid risk just to avoid failure. And in doing that, we avoid life. But sooner or later, the crash comes. And when it does, it teaches you something school never could: resilience. Still, even resilience needs rest. And that's something school definitely never gave us. Because, when was the last time anyone told you that resting was productive? School taught us to push, to hustle, to power through headaches, heartache, and exhaustion. If you stopped, you were lazy. If you slowed down, you were falling behind. And now, most of us don't even know how to relax without feeling guilty. But here's the truth life whispered when we were too burnt out to keep going: slowing down is not a weakness. It's a strategy. You're allowed to take naps. You're allowed to take breaks. You're allowed to pause, not because you're giving up, but because you're resetting. That's when you start hearing your own voice again. And in those quiet moments, you realize something else: you don't need 1,000 people to like you. You just need a few to really understand you. School made it seem like being liked was everything. You wanted the invite. You wanted the followers. You wanted to sit at the cool table. But once you leave those hallways behind, you learn that popularity is loud, but connection is deep. It's easy to be noticed. It's harder to be known. Real happiness comes from being seen in your weirdness, your flaws, your raw, unfiltered moments, and still being loved anyway. That's connection. That's what lasts. And here's the wild part. Some of the most invisible people in school go on to live the most meaningful lives because they were never pretending. And just when you think you've finally graduated from all that nonsense, life hits you with its final trick. You thought throwing your cap in the air meant you'd pass the test. But graduation, that's just where the real learning begins. Life's exams don't come with study guides. They show up as heartbreaks, rejections, layoffs, and nights where you're questioning your entire existence. And unlike school, there's no honor roll for surviving your darkest season. No attendance trophy for showing up when you feel broken. But still, you show up. And that's what matters. Because with every messy moment, you learn what they never taught you in class: how to trust yourself, how to fall forward, and how to rebuild even when the pieces don't look the same. And that's when you realize. School taught us to wait for instruction. Raise your hand, wait your turn, follow the rules. But no one told us the most powerful moments in life happen when you don't wait. When you speak up before you're ready. When you take a leap before you feel qualified. When you say yes to a version of yourself you haven't even met yet. No curriculum prepares you for that kind of courage. Because courage isn't safe. It doesn't come with rubrics or checklists. It comes with risk, with rejection, with real vulnerability. But the older you get, the more you realize. You don't need permission to rewrite your story. You don't need a degree to start over. You don't need anyone to validate your worth before you chase your joy. Because the real education, it's not about passing tests. It's about passing on your wisdom. It's about unlearning the lies and teaching the truth, to yourself and to others. You get to be your own professor now. You get to design the syllabus. And you get to decide that rest, joy, love, play, curiosity, and meaning are required courses. So if you're still healing from what school missed, you're not behind. You're ahead, because you're awake. And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all. You were never supposed to fit inside the system. You were supposed to outgrow it. So here's your final exam. Are you living the life you were trained for? Or the life you were made for? Only one of those leads to freedom. You know what's wild? We were told the goal was success. But no one ever paused to define it. For some, success means 6 figures. For others, it's peace, health, or time with family. But school framed it as one size fits all. Get the job, buy the house, retire early. And anything that didn't fit that mold. Failure. But here's what school never prepared you for. That redefining success is your responsibility. That it's okay if your dreams don't look like anyone else's. It's okay if you don't want the corner office. It's okay if your version of happiness is soft, quiet, simple, and unseen. It's not laziness to crave slowness. It's not weakness to choose ease. It's not failure to leave the path everyone else is sprinting down. Because real happiness, it's personal, it's spiritual, it's intentional, and it's usually found in the small stuff. A good laugh with someone who knows you. The confidence to say no without guilt. The bravery to say yes without certainty. The classroom never made space for that kind of magic. But life does. Every single day, life offers you a new question. Not, what did you accomplish today? But, did you show up honestly? Did you treat yourself gently? Did you make room for wonder? If school gave you answers, life gives you choices. You get to choose differently now. Not out of rebellion, but out of wisdom. Because the truth is, no one's coming to grade your joy. No one's evaluating your inner peace. And no one's handing you a diploma for healing. You give those things to yourself. And when you do, you finally graduate from surviving to living.